Welcome everybody for edition number 13 of SaaS Talks. Thank you for tolerating us for this long. We have enjoyed doing this, but just to set the context, the intent of these is not a monologue, not a panel discussion. Intent is to pick a micro topic where one can get a bit deeper into sort of just, I guess, short of getting your hands dirty on this call itself. Things that you need to know to execute that particular area is what we want to get into. Done many different problem areas in the past. And as I just mentioned on the call, first 10, 12 minutes is where I monopolize the conversation by asking questions, but thereafter it's an open for all. I just want to mention to everyone that look, it's important that we keep the questions relevant to the topic because we keep changing. But so for today, that topic is actually around alliances and partnerships. And I'll tell you at least why I thought we should pick this topic is that many early stage entrepreneurs, particularly that I talk to, and it is no surprise that many of them end up coming from engineering backgrounds and product backgrounds. The belief is that once you've built a product, once you have maybe some semblance of product market fit, thereafter you just find partners and partners will make you big. More often than not, reality does not turn out to be that way. Also, there is not one way to partner. There are many different ways of partnering, and part of that we'll explore on the call today. There are also different, I guess, even though there is no golden rule, but depending on the kind of product you are taking to market, the kind of target customer segment you have, it may also change the beat in terms of what kind of partners at what stage, what geography, all those things may change as well, and the business model with them. So intent is to go deeper into these topics. Clearly, I have two very good entrepreneurs on the call today. Let me begin with Kushal. And as is my sob story on every call, I will say that on this call as well, that I think I met Kushal for the first time back in 2013-14, when he had pretty much just started. It was very, very early days for Farai. And like my continuous string of mistakes as a venture capitalist, this is another one in the list that I made the mistake of not investing, despite one of the angel investors telling me repeatedly, Alok isme invest kar de, but I made the mistake clearly. But great to have you here, Kushal. Kushal has been running this company for the last 8.5 years. And it's in the space of, it's a software for logistics enterprises is the best way to think about it. Started from India, but now have a fairly global footprint. And boasts of a battery of very high quality investors as well. Arpit is the co-founder of Scienzy. Their t-shirts actually say it all for both of them. Today we are remiss on that front. I think I met Arpit for the first time only 3.5 years back. And I must say what struck me was just that, a very unique, what I would call sales instinct when I met with Arpit. Arpit leads the entire go-to-market function for Scienzy, which is essentially selling AI-led automation products to large financial institutions. Their customers are pretty large. And Arpit is a lawyer by his background, but somehow has stumbled into sales, I'll say. So with that background, I want to get started with both of you. And both for Arpit and Kushal, I do want to tell you that a lot of the people on the call happen to be early stage entrepreneurs as well. I know that both of you today run large companies with lots of people, with lots of functions. Your partnership and alliances team may itself be pretty large by this point in time. But I'm more interested in actually rewinding the clock a little bit and going more into the shoes of where you were in the first couple of years as you started the company. So Kushal, for you, I remember that when we met, at that point, India was more talking about SMB centric, lower ACV kinds of companies. You were a bit of an oddball, actually, I must say, at that point in time. And I'm sure GTM was a hard thing. So as you started, did you think about building the company with partnerships and alliances as a key pillar to it? Yes, no, and if so, what kind of partners were you thinking of at that point in time?
Yeah, Alok, thanks for having a call. And I think if I flip it, that's one of the questions with which I met you way back in 2014. So it matches if I go back 6, 7 years. Uh, but look, I think if I could, and I'm trying to go back and think, right? So part of it maybe will come subconsciously considering where we are today. But if I go back, I would say like you'll continuously hear about everyone talking, partners has done that, partners has worked it. And we actually thought we don't need partners. We thought we built a great product. We'll have a direct sales guys and we'll go and connect. And it's actually worked as well. Uh, Part of it we used LinkedIn as a direct outreach to meet everyone, and so it worked at the initial stages. But I think as we wanted to experiment or go into newer industry or newer geography, and for us one of them was Southeast Asia. For it wasn't a strategy, it happened, I would say, by luck, that some founders I met repeatedly again in these same events. And then we found it, like we literally formed a small team. Let's say you, me, Alok, that look, I'll be speaking with 5 guys, you'll be speaking with 5 guys. Let me know which works for you, which works for me. And it wasn't really a alliances program, but it was true founder partnerships, right? Like maybe one of the guys we couldn't meet because we were meeting someone else, but I'll still get the contact. I'll still get was the person right or not to connect. And so I think first stage, what really worked for us was not large partners, but a smaller playing in the same ecosystem and complementing your solution. And I'll give 1 or 2 examples, right? Like for us, 2, 3 large deals in Southeast Asia happened with the founder and sales team of Exotel. Now, Exotel is a cloud telephony. We were into logistics SaaS. So we'll go there and those companies say, yeah, we need cloud telephony. And it actually worked oppositely. They were selling and they said, yeah, cloud telephony we need, but we need the entire solution set as well to drive the customer experience. And they got us in, and this is how we did it. And then 2, 3 founders who were based in Bombay and all, I got them few customers like Snapdeal, Jabong. I made them flew to Delhi, got 3 customers because we were doing last mile and these guys had a broader TMS solution. So essentially, I feel the first stage, what works, at least for us, was smaller companies. So you're not going through 50, 100 presentations, 50, 100 people, and then program, and they need so many things from you. That do you have team ready? Do you have partner program ready? Do you have commission structure ready? Do you have training model ready? यार वो मतलब वो तो खुद की टीम के लिए भी रेडी नहीं होता था मतलब तो पार्टनर के लिए तो it's you've not heard of so many things, right? They'll say partner enablement and you'll go and think, dude, I don't even have sales enablement. How do I get partner enablement, right? So I would say sometimes it feels like if we get one of these big partners like the Microsofts, the SAPs, or the big software companies of the world, it'll change because every single customer of theirs is our customer, and it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, at least for me and the folks I've interacted. So the bet initially, what worked for us was those smaller companies who are nimble, who able to get customers, and who believe in true partnerships. So that you there. And the other thing I feel, which is also important, I think somewhere we one of the mistakes we made was we thought partner will go ahead and sell for us, and you'll sit at home and the money will come in your bank account and it'll increase. It just doesn't happen as well. You have to be part of every single deal as a founder, as a head of sales, whatever hat you're wearing. It doesn't work. Whoever that partner is, however great that partner is, I don't think anyone can sell a solution better than the founder in those early stage. Not even your sales guys and be trusting the extended partner. It will not work. So I would say not having a larger goal on the partners at the early stage is one learning we had. Second, being there yourself. Yeah. And then third, looking at that ecosystem solutions that I'm doing A, someone else is doing B, something is doing C. And typically maybe it'll become a good fit together. So meet with those founders, meet with those smaller companies. It could be legacy companies. It's not necessary it needs to be a startup as yours. But just tie it up together, go in there, works. It could be a local services company as well. That's Alok. Maybe I'll take a pause for an early stage.
I will have several comments and questions later on this, but I want to come to Arpit because in many ways, Scienzy has taken a very different approach, at least even the first time, Arpit, I think when you and I spoke, I know that you guys were on the threshold of a partnership with MasterCard at that point itself, which is frankly at the size you guys were at was a pretty amazing feat. And if I may confess on this call also, I thought that this is not going to go anywhere because of the same reason that Kushal just mentioned. You go and partner with the Microsoft and the SAPs of the world. I mean, you have to have partner enablement, this dot. How did you guys, first of all, even make it happen to begin with? And how did you actually make sure that it actually works even thereafter?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, as Kushal said, right? I mean, I think initially as a startup and as a founder, you have to be lucky. And luck comes with two things: being at the right time, at the right place. Time is very difficult to predict. You can be at the right place. So what we did is, I'm assuming you know who your end customer is. So if you don't know that, please don't go for partnership. You're going to just be all over the place. It won't make any sense. But assuming you know who your end customer is, for us, it was banks, it was financial institutions. So we said, who is that one player who works with almost all banks? And for us, that was the network companies, Visa, MasterCard, Amex. Uh, what we did was we actually approached everyone. So we started pitching our solution to MasterCard, we started pitching our solution to Visa, we started pitching it to Amex, and we were approaching everyone. The second thing is that I think it's very important that, I mean, there might be also a server vendor who is selling to a bank, right? And IBM is also going to a bank. So the second thing to be a right place is that our product had to fit somewhere in the story that provider is giving to your end customer, right? We can't be working with a vendor who's providing furniture to a bank, right? That makes no sense. So you have to be lucky, no doubt about it. But to be lucky, you have to be at the right place. To be at the right place, I think hustle is the only way you can do it, which is be everywhere. Be everywhere initially, be at every possible partner that you once you categorize them, they are hitting your customer segment and also they are near to your product. Talk to all of them, and then the right timing you cannot predict. For us, at the moment we were talking to MasterCard, they were looking to build their merchant onboarding solution. So they were looking to build a product that we had, and that was just luck. But to generate the luck, we would have, for example, spoken to 10 other companies in a same space, and that one company is where your right time, right place happened. So I think you need to define your customer segment, then ask yourself who all are there who's pitching to the same customer, and in whose story do I fit somewhere.
Got it. Got it. So Arpit, my time's already up, I realized. I mean, even in literally asking you guys one question each, my time got up. I have several questions at the back of it, but I will make one point on the back of what Kushal made. My first investment was a company called LinguaNext. It was a very interesting technology, which essentially you could render an enterprise application in any language you wanted without writing an extra piece of code. So you don't touch the code, but you can render it in any language. The founder was a 17-year veteran of SAP. And I myself had just come from SAP. And I remember that we did a partnership with SAP. Just that contract took 6 months. And in several years, we didn't have a dime to show. Even though we knew, I guess, every sales VP, every sales SVP across the globe practically, but we couldn't convert. And sometimes it shows how difficult it is to actually make real revenue flow. To the point, Kushal, you are making. I know some of you have begun to put questions. Other people don't feel shy. I'm sure you will not. Actually, the list of questions are actually growing. I'm going to pick those questions one by one. I have another request. I know that a lot of people on the call actually have pretty stellar backgrounds. on how to make partnerships work. A lot of you have been running your businesses for a while. So if any of you actually have done partnerships, made them successful, or even if actually the experience was otherwise, please do raise your hands and please join the screen here on the panel itself. Don't need to be shy. So please do come on board. So let me begin with the first question itself. And Kushal, this is for you, which is, why did it not work with the big companies or the big partners in the beginning, even though you have touched upon it? But I think might be just good to emphasize, because I know a lot of companies, when they start, they immediately want to have EY and PwC and Deloitte and SAP and Microsoft as their partners. So
yeah, so Alok, the excitement where it becomes starts for you is you'll meet one of those guys either through events or through Connect, and then this guy would say, look, it's a great solution and all. And that day you get super excited. Wow, with this person, so many clients will get in. I think some of the things what you also mentioned, right? One, the entire process itself dies you. Like, I'll be very, very candid. The 6 months of contracting just to start working with the partner. Then somewhere there'll be few legal statements, there'll be few NDAs, there'll be few IP restrictions, who will sell, who will get how much commissions, pricing of the solution, where will you fit in? A lot of this, you're also figuring it out as you grow and scale. So I think because your sales model is not repeatable, both from a messaging and both from a process perspective, it gets very difficult for a large organization who actually needs a structured process. So I think that's where, like, my rationale here is, till you are able to make that process structured, a large organization cannot sell because they'll not be hustling for you. But versus small, who is willing to hustle, give you a call, get you into the meeting, it works little better. And we tried with same people 3-4 years back versus today, we're seeing a different outcome. And we also ask ourselves, has their strategy changed? Something changed at our end? It's just that now we know exactly who's my buyer, why is he buying, what's the pitch, what's the pricing. So it becomes a lot more, I think that structured sales is where I would say difficult for a larger organization. And plus the process also takes a lot of time. So both end, and for you, each quarter is counting because you want to reach to a specific scale. Maybe you're going for a fundraise goal in 1 year, 18 months time. Now in that, it'll take 20-30% of your bandwidth, but it'll contribute 5% or one deal at max. It just doesn't work. And they want to be a little safer as well. Unless they'll get you one customer, they don't want to open multiple doors. So I think the odds of success is lower. While I agree with Arpit that you need luck. So I don't disagree to the fact that, and you need to knock 100 doors to get that luck as well.
Fair point. Anant, maybe you can introduce yourself quickly as well, because.
Sure. Hey, hi everyone. Thanks, Alok, Arpit, for having me. So B2B SaaS product, non-transaction. We're about a little less than 3 million in revenue. And we are 6 co-founders, all of us ex-IBM, Accenture, EY. I used to run the consulting practice of EY in Chennai before chucking it and starting Worksogo.
So you are actually part of the ex-bad boys that everybody's referring to here.
Yes. So, and
you know that, right? Everyone will pay you to open the partner network for them.
Yes.
So that is exactly what makes you very well qualified to chime in on this one.
So all of us, like I said, we were in these system integrators, consulting companies prior to starting out. And when I say all of us, our CEO was heading KPMG Consulting in India before. He was an SAP implementer. So we understand SAP enterprise deployments, enterprise software, and sales process, but services. As a product company, the first port of call for us, and we're 5 years in now, first port of call was, let's go to all the partners and all the folks we know, we grew up with, juniors who are now leaders and all that, to try and go and pitch to them. Happy to share, despite having the background, we've not closed a single deal with any big fours in the last 5 years. Despite running the same practices, and the people who we made partners, we telling them, lagao isko. In this customer, this use case, this is the problem, this is the pricing, this is how we'll contract with you. So, I think the reason is, I think it's misplaced priorities. We've done reasonably well with an Accenture and a Capgemini. For a consulting partner, their revenue cycle is very different from a technology implementer or an SI guy, and very different from a revenue cycle for a SaaS product. For us, it's about wo monthly kaise start karna hai. For a consulting partner, it's I've got $1 million 6-month transformation, ABC, whatever going on. It's not aligned. Your revenue priorities are not aligned. So it for us at least, it didn't work, right? So it might work for a transaction-based process. So I just wanted to share that. For system integrators, it's worked because at least a little bit of Accenture, Cap, and all these guys, they seem to understand deployment and then recurring revenues as a mental construct, not a commercial construct. So the guys who will sell for you with the customer, and I think Arpit, you spoke, I completely agree. Even though we've gone, and I personally have done about 50 pitches with these partners to CXOs, global CXOs. They can't sell for you. Even though they will have your slide, you will have to do that. So sorry, I think that's about it. For us, it's not worked. I think it's, for me, the root cause was the revenue cycle orientation for the SIs. It is, or the consulting guys, it's completely different. We need to recognize that and see if we can align some way with them.
So Anand, please do stay on the call. Please don't leave. I think you will have useful experience to share. But Gaurav, let's bring you in. Would love for you to introduce yourself and ask your question. I believe you have also posted on the Q&A panel, but please go ahead and ask.
Yeah, I wanted to share my experience actually. So hi, my name is Gaurav Mehta and I head the global alliances for Capillary. Been in the industry for last 25 years. I think, Alok, you came on one of the call with Capillary, right? If I don't.
Yes, several times I've been there.
Yeah, during pandemic, right. So I had the alliances and I have been in the industry for last 25 years. I have run my own 3 companies in the past. Was doing consulting for a couple of startups and all of them, and helping them to set up the alliances ecosystem at some point in time. So in my view, I think I don't think it is unfair to say whether channel partner is right or big companies are right. It is a function of who you are, first of all. What do you want to target? Where do you want to target, right? So for example, if you have a tech product and you are targeting the mid segment or SME segment, I think channel partners would do wonders for you, because they understand the tech far better than the business applications. Because most of the channel partners that you will find, let's say, Kushal, because you are targeting Southeast Asia. So most of the channel partners understand the hardware language, networking language, and all of that far better. And their sales guys are also tuned to that. Now, suddenly you go and say that you need to do a concept selling, designing and stuff like this. They won't be able to adjust to that. While they will say, yes, I can open the doors and all of that, that becomes difficult. Secondly, if you're targeting the SME segment, right, to start with, I think channel partners is a good choice for you, because that's a sweet spot for them. Third thing is, as far as the partner enablement is concerned, in my experience, generally I've seen that channel partners also suck a lot of bandwidth. They keep coming back and saying, hey, I have a customer, can you come onto the call? You come onto the call and then later realize that this guy only know the IT manager, nothing beyond that. And the business decision cannot happen beyond that. And that's where you find that you're kind of stuck. Nothing is moving. So last year, I'll be honest with you, in Capillary, we tried a lot of things because this was the first year of setting up the alliances ecosystem. So we went out to product partners, channel partners, all 5 categories of partner that you could imagine. And this year we decided to shut down channel partner, shut down cloud partner, shut down product partners. And this year we are totally focused on 4 partners only. Globally, 4 partners with a team of 4 people. 2 of them are large system integrators and 2 of them are the large consulting partners. Now coming to the consulting partner, my viewpoint is, if you have an enterprise class product, which is better suited for the top band of the customers, which is like 500 million onwards or $1 billion or $1 to $5 billion onwards, then I think consulting as large system integrators is absolutely a great choice. Why? Because one, they will see a lot of meat for themselves. That's one. You will fit very well into the large digital transformation that they are running after, right? Third thing is, and I have seen it multiple times in my entire career of last 25 years, your chances of doubling up the value that you are creating out of the large partners is far higher. with the large partners, right? Because if you are charging $100, you have a great opportunity to charge $200, $300, even $400 with them. If you aspire to close a large enterprise deal, which is multi-country, complex, 50 country, 10 country, and all of that, no channel partner can get you there, right? So if your aspiration is that I want to close the mid segment or the SME segment into a country itself, and I'm happy with that, then channel partner is a great choice. If you have a bigger ambition and your product demands, that kind of ecosystem, I think SI partners and this partner. So Kaushal, I think to your frustration on, and maybe I think Arpit or I think someone spoke about that. I think Anand spoke about that So I fully agree with you. It may take 6 months or 1 year to get in there. And I'll be honest with you that in the last 6 months, we are doing tremendous amount of effort with the consulting partners and all of that. And I know that it will take further time, but looking at the pipeline, which is like 40%. So today's 40% of the global pipeline stands with the partners. And I'm pretty sure that in the next 2 months' time, I will cross 55% of the global pipeline. And that is because we are gunning the big partners, big deals, multi-country, and all of that. So,
got it. Very interesting, Gaurav. I know Anand is also on the call. Can I actually, Arpit, if you're okay, can I take a question first from Ugam, because he has put it a long time back, and it's a very unique question, at least, which I think we don't end up paying too much focus on. His question is that customer success is, of course, very critical, right? Now, when you're selling through a partner, how do you align customer success as a function? Is it your partner who's responsible for customer success? Are you responsible for it? How do you manage that equation? I don't know which of you have experienced that, but any of you, I mean, all of you have run successful companies now. Would be useful to get an answer from any of you.
So at least we have had a similar experience where eventually customer success, when everything is going right, I think, no one is really talking about it. You talk about it when something is not going right and you need to address it. And I think it falls on both eventually, right? Your brand affects their ability to sell you and vice versa. So I think that's a very good question that is being asked, that when you are doing a partnership, you need to figure out a post-sales model to the end customer. We have faced issues with it that we did not factor it in. It came as an operational overhead later on to us, and that was a cost out of our pocket. So we did suffer some losses because we did not make it very clear when we kind of signed the partnership or we went ahead with partnership. So I think a very good question, actually. That should be part of your partnership discussion.
I'll probably add to it. Look, I think customers, like obviously we're talking about setting up alliances channels, right? Customers are your biggest partners, whichever way and form we look at it, right? Because referenceability plays the biggest role in those early and mid stages lot, right? Now, there's a difference, I think, between proactive and reactive to what Arpit is saying. If you want to be proactive, then you need to own the customer success, monitor it, and partner can help you execute it. But if on the other opposite end, if you're reactive, then something breaks down, they'll call to the partner and then it'll reach to you. I think initially it's 100% worthwhile for you to own it. And then as you see partners getting there, then you start a dual model where you say part of this they do, part of this you do. Because at any cost, you do not want customer experience to go down. That's the fundamental which I'm coming from.
So Kushal, I just want to add to that. Partners should see money in the service, right? If they are only doing L1 and L2 and they are getting like 5% of the overall deal and there's not much incentive for them to get a trained guy, get attached to the product and all of that, they will never do a justice with that, even though they say yes to this. So unless you close 3-4 deals and there is a critical mass, and if the guy is putting, let's say 0.25 or 0.5 FT, and that makes economical sense to him, he will do the justice. So I think at the end, money matters. So I would suggest that we be mindful about that.
Got it. I mean, shall we bring in Anand from Viro in? I know, Anand, you have been waiting.
No worries, no worries.
Please go ahead with your question.
Hi, Arun. I had a question for Arpit. So, I don't know if he dropped off. But
yeah, as soon as you said Arpit, he ran away.
You said that your question is very tough. I mean, but why don't you go ahead? I mean, he has a backup with several other people on the call right now.
Sure. So
no, you go ahead. But I was just trying to get up and keep my teacup somewhere actually.
So we've had both types of track record. We've had partners where we ended up with nothing after the amount of effort that Kushal described, but we've also had some success. And what I found is that one of the biggest benefits that big logo partners can do for you is open a door. You still take it from there. You still sell because they cannot sell like you. You still handle customer success because it's at the end of the day your brand. But when interacting with sales folks who work for the partner company, one of the things I constantly realize is that we are not top of mind for them. Right? They are incentivized to sell 10,000 other things. And at best, if you ask for a specific introduction or you try and work out a specific deal or you have a track record, they can take you somewhere. Maybe they have a CXO's ear or maybe they have a CXO's attention. The effort is still going to be on you, which is fine. Nobody can sell like you. Nobody can be as passionate as a founder. But Arpit, given the kind of ecosystem and the kind of partners through Visa and through Amex and the big guys you went with, are there any things that you can do to sort of incentivize them to keep you at the top of mind?
Yeah,
That's basically.
I think that's a great point. See, initially when your run rate or your revenue is very small, the money doesn't matter at all to them. No one will prioritize you because of the size of your contract. The commission or the top of the line they will make from your deal is nothing compared to what they're trying to make. So for us, for example, what worked was that there is a KPI with one team in MasterCard whose KPI is to onboard merchants because it is very critical to their payment ecosystem. So someone in MasterCard as a business unit is just looking at this KPI, how many merchants can you onboard? And that's their KPI, it's not revenue. And we were lucky enough to have found this team. And why I'm again using this word lucky, yeah, it's not eventually about luck. You have to, so we would have spoken to at least 30 business lines in MasterCard and 29 of them did not show interest in us. It was this one business line to whom our email would have reached and we made sense to them. I mean, and when I'm saying no interest, everyone, as Kushal rightly said, everyone tells you, very interesting product, let's chat. But when I'm saying interest means real interest. So this was one business line in MasterCard whose entire KPI was not revenue, but it was number of merchants, which perfectly aligned with what we were trying to do. So I think when you're early in your stage, when your size of deal will not matter, I don't think you should look for this factor that is there something else which well aligns with the goals and which I can provide on day one. If you can't provide on day one, I think we should not fool ourselves that a $100,000 deal to a large partner means nothing. It is how much they spend in flying and staying in hotels, at an individual sales level. So that your deal size does not matter. You need to find some criteria which perfectly aligns and actually makes a difference to their KPI, and find that one business team within a very large partner. And we keep using this term partner, and I wanted to, a lot of people are on call, maybe who have not established partnership. It is not about that partner. Each large institution has multiple business verticals. You need to find that single business vertical whose there is value to your product to that business vertical. It may so happen that you may meet someone who may reject you. Don't get disheartened. Find that one business vertical to whom your product will make sense.
I think it's an excellent point, Arpit. I think in general, you have to answer the question, who is your champion and for whom are you like a must have? That must have person is important to find. Otherwise, you'll end up going nowhere in these partnerships. If it's okay, I know there are two more people who want to ask question. I'm trying to balance between the Q&A panel also. Yeah. There is a question that actually two people have asked, and I know that a lot of early stage founders struggle with it. Is that what is the economic arrangement with your partners? What kind of revenue share do you give? Or does it depend on the kind of partnership? I think if anybody can give a flavor on what's a good number to share, what is too much, what is too little. I think giving that range and those circumstances behind that range, I think it'll be a very useful thing for founders to hear.
So I can take it up, Alok.
Sure.
As far as channel partners is concerned, I think they would generally expect anywhere between 15 to 20% is pretty much standard on top of your, at least the product license. Services is something that you can build for them and tell them that, okay, it depends on your focus, right? You can't confuse the partner ecosystem by saying that I will sell the product and I will do the services as well, because that will confuse everyone, right? So you need to decide, where is your money, and then just focus on that and leave rest of the things for the partners to come and deliver that. So for the channel partners, I think 15 to 20% top line, 15 to 20% margin and the top line on your product license, I think it's a fair one. In addition to that, you should also park some of the services for them. As far as consulting partners are concerned, I think the kind of services they are interested is definitely not the core configuration that you want to do, or even the low end work like a simple integration is something that they're not interested, right? So you need to specifically carve out additional set of services which the consulting partner can take up. And if you don't know that, I think it's good to have an heart-on-heart discussion with them, saying that, hey, this is my product, this is what my customers demand for, these are the business problems I'm solving for my brand, for my customers. Now let's sit together and discuss that what are the services that we can evolve around that is going to be exciting to you. Because at many times you may not even know, there are tons of services which they know better than you. So leave some of that, for the discussion and carve out those things. I think, I think these are broadly, and I think system integrator will fall somewhere in between for that matter, right? So yeah.
I don't know if anybody else would like to add. I also have some points, but I don't know, Arpit, Kushal.
Yeah, so Alok, I think part of it, Gaurav, what you said, right? Based on type of partners, I think an easier way to look at it is what's the cost for you, the lead gen cost, the part of the sales process cost, and then the part of the delivery cost, right? As a business. And you know what percentage you're allocating to it, right? And what piece is being owned by the partner as well. Because you'll get some who say, look, I can open doors for you, but you need to run the sales process. Some would say, yeah, I can actually help you close as well. And point, Gaurav, you mentioning, some of them would say, look, I want to own the services. I've got enough, maybe 1 or 2 projects we do together, but eventually I want to own the services. So first 2 costs, I think for 1 or 2 projects, you can negotiate, but eventually the person wants to own the services cost as well. I'd see that range a little broader, Gaurav. I've seen resellers actually going a little higher as well, where they're saying, look, I'll own the entire piece of it from, let's say, 30% or a little more as well. I think one of the difference we've seen is because traditionally in the licensing model, the contract value was way higher compared to the SaaS. SaaS, it's actually recurring. So you only look at first year ARR and then percentage of it, and then you scale, land and scale as well. In licensing, it's typically a 3-year large value. So they've been used to a larger money as well. And I'll add one more perspective, which typically we lose while looking at these maths, right? We try to look at from our shoes and our business. I think partner is also running a business. Sometimes we kind of miss that and we say, look, I can't give you 10%, more than 10% or 12%. And you tell your head of partnership, now you got to go and get within this, whoever you get it. For them to actually invest in you, get a sales guy to open the doors for you, run that process, there's a cost they're investing as well. And they'll not make money first year, they'll also make money in the second year, third year as well. So sometimes we get too, I would say too selfish or too shrewd as founders that we want to take most of it. But I would say as partners scale, right, your business fundamental change dramatically because your growth rate, your function of scale becomes very different. So I'm actually a little more bullish to give it extra to try it out and then readjust as you progress and as you see. And one additional element I've seen is either an incentive or a target-based model where you ask the partner to commit something. It could be a soft commitment. It doesn't need to be a hard commitment. But you ask them, look, how many deals are we going to target for first year? How many deals do you think we'll be able to open up? So it just gives you a reality check as well from an expectation to what they were saying and eventually where you see. Because it's a regular churn process. You'll start with X, you will end with X minus, Y plus plus. And then third year it'll be different. So for that regular churn, if you do not have that expectations, it's difficult to clean that as well. So 3-4 different elements, but range, it's little higher, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a very important point. I know, Anand, you also want to make a point. Just to add to Kushal, what you said, it depends on the role they're playing the sales cycle. If they're running the end-to-end sales cycle, your sales guy doesn't even need to show up. Then I think it's okay to even pay 50% actually.
I would agree.
And I've seen plenty of examples of 50%. I mean, when I was on the other side of the table at SAP, there were several software companies which we used to distribute on our price list. But then we will take 50%. I think it was worthwhile for both parties for that to happen. Whereas I've seen as little as 10%, which is nothing more than a referral where you do an introduction and then you're off the table as well. So I think on both ends of the spectrum. Anand, please go ahead. You wanted to add.
I was coming from the other end of this goalpost. So some of our experiences with percentages, and I'll give you just a little bit of thinking, maybe hear from Arpit, Kaushal, Gaurav, and all of you on what you think about it. We've done deals which are single digit percentages as far as 3-year ARR based contracts are concerned for our product sale, single digit. This is 8%, 7%, 9% kind of thing. So the way we've structured it for our partnerships is the role that the partner is playing, and we've kept it reasonably simple. Open the door, sell for us, own the program, own the client. So these are the 4 mota buckets that we have. So if the partner owns the client, then our role is a dabba sale. We give the product. It's a cookie cutter thing we give, and then the way they price it, it's a different story. If they're owning the deployment, which is the own the deployment part, right? So then it becomes, I mean, so in the entire chain, right, it becomes more and more transactional in nature. So okay, you're going to be with me only for the next X number of months or quarters or whatever. Beyond that, it's my baby, my problem, between me and the end customer, what I'm doing. Third one is help in the sale, even more transactional. So then it's about how you contract it out, what percentages. Third one is last one, open the door, is the simplest of the lot. It's a finder's fee kind of thing. You open a door, I'm giving you something, thank you very much, and let's open another door. So I just want to, so I think single, at least our experience, very limited right now, I'd say it's 5-6 deals, but we've seen this structure helping us figure out, irrespective of the size of the partner, and as well as the nature of the conversation. So for example, we're working with an automotive player, and the partner who's brought us the deal is someone who was in JD Power. So, knows the automotive sector and knows the customers, the buyers for our product. So that person is now just doing open the door for us, and we are perfectly fine with that. And, another example where with the Big Four, it's they're owning the deployment. So they're saying, okay, 1-year transformation, this tool will be 50% of what we do. There are other things and all. So there's a different equation there. So I just thought while the higher numbers seem to make sense, I think these 4 buckets, at least mentally for us, while we give targets to ourselves and the teams, it makes it very easy to figure out which bucket they'll fit in. Hello.
One question I think it's come on the Q&A panel also, is how do you manage conflict between, let's say, partners, whatever form, and direct sales teams that we have ourselves?
I'll actually take it up because we've gone through that multiple cycle and learned it. Arpit, my conclusion, right? And I'm still with which we're building right now. You want a collaboration, you don't want a competition as a business, right? Because what you don't want is a different positioning in front of customer by 2 people. And I think a lot of big companies have gone into it. I feel you keep this, at least what we've done is, if our sales team is involved, you do not incentivize them, or you do not incentivize them the same way. The person would typically want to move the partner out, and he would be more excited on the direct deals. So we've actually kept, as a model, as a company, we said we'll invest and we'll have double cost for this, for the partner commission and for the sales team as well, where both of them are involved. Because we want to grow faster and we want to have that scale. So our efficiency will be a little lower. And eventually you want to move that to a partner team where your sales team is not involved. So I think my a simple answer is we've kept incentives for both. If both of them gets added up, it becomes a little higher cost for us as a business. Because what we want to achieve is we want to achieve success across. We don't want the field guys to feel that this is a partner deal, I'm not excited about it because I learn less. Somewhere you're incentivizing it. as you scale and some partners become mature, and I think to point, I think Gaurav, you were also mentioning, then you start making a separate team to drive that. But that's not something you should be trying to optimize. I think it becomes like in my language, I say it's being penny wise and pound foolish. We're trying to earn 3% extra and actually losing that 97% of the deal. Or together it could increase the conversion rate. See, point is because you're also playing on the conversion rate. It's not just about the deal value. If it increases 1 month, like if your deal gets closed 1 month earlier, you have earned 8% extra, or your pricing have increased by 8% in that year. And that's significant value.
Kushal, I'll just go an extra mile. If you are damn serious about that partnership is the way going forward and X percentage of revenue, you want to come in from the partners in future, and you have a conviction that yes, we have to crack it, I would encourage the founders to even apply accelerator for your sales guys. So if the sales guy is doing a direct sales, he's got a 100% quota retirement. If he is working with the partners, then 120%, 130%. And then once you see that the partner model is getting mature, then you can again bring it to 100. That's fine.
Very interesting. Couldn't agree more. Plus one to what Gaurav said. Shall we go to Subramaniam, because I know he has been waiting for a long time on the screen. So Subramaniam, please go ahead. Maybe introduce yourself.
Hi. I run a company called Vegam. We offer smart manufacturing solutions to large enterprise customers. And our deal sizes are generally upwards of 200,000. And customer revenue would be lifetime of about 5 million to 10 million. And I've seen a very typical problem when we deal with channel partners, primarily system integrators. When we jointly go to sales, when they are leading the sales, they flip the solution at the last minute when they have full control of the deal, which means, say I'm competing with Microsoft, I'm competing with AWS, I'm competing with Siemens. They would flip you out of the deal. They would actually cut you out of the deal, bring in somebody big, because they can do a lot more on those platforms to generate more of their revenues, right? So we've seen this pattern. So we find it very uncomfortable to invest our time into such partnerships. I want to hear the panel's views on this.
Yeah. So, sorry, Subbu, I have very real life example. I'll just take a minute on that. Simple equation is demand the partner. If they are interested to work with you, you can do an initial presentation and things like this to see how the fitment is for you as far as for them. And if there is reasonable fitment and they are interested to work with you, demand them that you want to get in front of the customer together. The moment you are in front of the customer, then it becomes difficult for them to chuck you out at the last moment. And the moment the customer says that, yeah, I love you, your product is great, the partners will automatically work with you, because you have to generate a positivity in mind of the customer. And if the customer says the same thing to the system integrator, they will never check you out. And at the end, last thing is, it also depends on the relationship, right? So in initial days, even here or in all my past experiences, we have seen that the partners will use you as a third or fourth option, but you remain consistent that, yes, I want to make it work, and give very positive messages to the partner. Yeah, that has happened. That's fine. But I want to remain invested into the relationship, and we'll make it work. You will see that they will start considering you as a number two, and eventually they will consider you as the prime vendor for all the deals, right? So you have to cross the hurdle and become the priority partner for them, but it will take its own time. So have patience on that.
Gaurav, I would plus one to that, and the way we say it is fake it till you make it kind of a thing with the partners thing. And we've had actually, Subbu, the opposite way, where partner got us a deal, then he said, no, we don't want to work with you, and then partner engaged. Customer reached out that, look, we like your solution, they loved our solution, and they asked the partner, look, if you want to work with us, we want to get this vendor, and that's the only reason we'll sell with you. So I think eventually it's customer who's making the choice. It's not the partner that's making the choice. So if customer starts loving your product and the presentation and the capabilities, partners will automatically fall in that journey. If customers try to move in both direction, then partners will choose where they make money. I think it's a pure business call, which that partner is also eventually making at the end of the day.
Kushal and Arpit, I want to add there one point from my perspective. We have gone through exact same scenario like you explained, wherein a large customer, $1 million deal, The partner checked us out and we were in the dark. We only had done technical presentations and technical detailing, but we were not part of the commercial engagement. I get a call from my customer prospect at that time saying, "Hey, Subbu, are you coming for this meeting?" I said, "No, I'm not part of this." And they said, "Okay, do you know your partner is cutting you out?" And they have brought in Microsoft as an alternative. So it went to a point where my partner was checked out of that customer and blacklisted, and they engaged with us and they gave us the deal. So yes, what you say happens because we are solution company. We are very passionate, right? So we bring value. Services company cannot bring that because they're really bringing people and a process, but we bring domain and knowledge, right? But the challenge still remains. I got lucky with that deal, and we got the deal. We had that kind of a presence there in that particular customer. Else, the loss for us for investing into such a deal is pretty large because we are talking of a large value deal, which means we would invest a lot of time to make those happen. So that really is the fear and the concern, that how do we balance this act of dealing with system integrators, because they just check you out on a deal and you are completely in dark. Because you are in front of customer, but not necessarily part of the full deal. That's why you have given them that responsibility and trust.
So Subbu, don't submit a commercial offer unless you are in front of the customer. So you have to play hard at times to make the partner realize that you and your product and your company is valuable, nothing less than Microsoft for that matter. So Microsoft, I'm just taking the name for the sake of taking, no offense, but don't consider yourself as a small company and stuff like this. So if you have a great product which can compete with anyone in the world, be confident about that and sell the same way to the partners. They will come back to you.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to move on because we have only 7 minutes left. So I'm going to insert a different question, but not good as a topic. Let's assume that you have done a partnership. You have signed the paperwork. That's done now, right? In your companies, is there anybody who's carrying a partner quota? And is there a difference between the role of people who create new partners versus those who get money from existing partners? How do you manage pipeline? So how does the actual sales process pipeline management work with your partners? And whose sort of head is on the line for that to happen?
Interesting, Alok. Maybe I can start. If you don't have anyone accountable, it will not work. So there needs to be a name there which has to own it. And it also needs to be, I think if you're starting in early stage or a mid stage, right, it has to be the company's priority as well. So you need to put up either a founder or the CEO, one of the top management team as well, that look, this year we want to start investing in partners. We understand it will be a longer journey, it will be a tougher journey, and we want to make it successful. Unless that messaging is out there to your sales guys, to your field guys, it will not work without the name. The second part, it has to be, I would say, harder, and you got to be more rigorous than what you're doing with your own sales team in terms of running that program, because your sales team still has that basic salary attached and that job. The partners do not. They can sell 100 more products and make money. So if you're not following up them, weekly cadence, what's the pipe, what happened in the solution, where do you need help? Oh, this pitch, I'll be there. I'll not pick it up unless you need me. And you do one or two magics going with them where their sales team feels, look, these guys are super confident. Unless you do that, it doesn't work. Like we did with Honeywell, and I'll give that little example, Alo, where we actually had dedicated folks to make it successful.
Yeah.
And turn it around for them, going in front of to the customers along with them, running a hardcore follow-up program, making those custom deck for them. And you'll need to dedicate a pre-sales team as well. It just doesn't work only with sales. We feel that pre-sales is not needed. Pre-sales is equally needed. Will make those guys super successful. And pre-sales becoming a super friend of their sales guys, I think then you've actually nailed it. Because then as soon as they hear, they'll actually call the pre-sales guy. Hey, I was in this company, there's this opportunity. Do you think I can have? So I think that's the other part. And then eventually you move it on a tool or an Excel. I think that's more of a scale and a process thing, but it has to be harder and stronger than what you're doing for individual team. And enablement team and success team, I think that also is different. One who's getting actually the partner, partners, and again, it's number of ways you can, number of folks you can invest in. So someone is kind of recruiting the partners, then someone who's making them successful, and then someone who's kind of ensuring that enablement piece from a deal perspective. It could be one person playing the role initially, or 2%, but eventually you'll have these as separate roles, so to say.
Kushal, just a curious question, and I don't know, please feel free to not answer, but today, what percentage of revenue for you comes from partnerships?
Oh, the large deals, so we started with the smaller ones, then we moved to a stage where the consulting ones, right? Like the big folks, maybe just to give you an example, the Accentures of the world, these, because I think the stage you want to reach is they commit to a quota for you guys as well. These becomes the second stage. And the third stage we've seen is an ecosystem play, where these are the solutions, these are the players who are playing in the ecosystem. How is my product fitting in, let's say with Microsoft? How is my product fitting in with all of these guys? Because you want, see, what's your aspiration? Every single deal happening in the market, your name needs to be there. That's fundamental aspiration. I think all the founders want today or tomorrow. Now, all the ecosystem players, if you're connected, that increases the size of your pie. The SI guys like the Accentures of the world or the other global SIs, right? It helps you from a conversion perspective because they can build a larger digital transformation program, help you with little more elements, go deeper. So one is to increase the pipe and the other is the closure of the pipe. You need typically help in both. For us, it's we started investing heavily from last year to kind of build it up. I would say about 1/4 is actually being directly, indirectly influenced. And I see this growing faster than our own sales.
It's actually not a bad number. Guys, sorry to chime in, but I know that Sri Kumar has been waiting for a long time on the screen. So please go ahead, ask your question, and that will be the last question for the day. I don't know, Sri Kumar, if you can still hear us or...
Alok, you still get the option to ask the last question.
Yeah, hello, thanks for letting me, Sri Kumar here from...
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, this is Sri Kumar, founder and CEO of Winning UK. And we are in the safety and compliance space, B2B SaaS. I'm a solopreneur, completely grown out of partners. And I just want to share experience. So it's the question of sell to or sell through and sell with. So we have large accounts, including Amazon and some of the leading brands across. So wherever it has worked in the areas of adding value to the partner, where the partner has a net new revenue because of working with us. So examples would be 3M, where in the healthcare, where we amplify new revenues, in food safety, where they have new revenues because of working with us. So where we lead the problem solving, customer engagement relationship, but the invoicing and other things is managed through them for whatever governance and legal and so on. But that gives a large footprint. So long as there is no conflict, and if there is a complementing relationship with IoT vendors or compliance auditors and other providers, it works. Whenever there is a technology provider, there is another application sitting, or typically there is another company which partner who is meeting the CIO and wants to own the data or cloud or API, it has been a problem. But working with non-tech partners have helped us accelerate the sales cycle. If it would have taken us, our own sales team or our own whatever engagement, say take 4 to 6 months sales cycle, enterprise sales cycle, with these kind of domain and other partners, we are able to close it within 6 weeks to 3 months. Just wanted to share.
Sri, thank you so much for chiming in. And I know it's 6 o'clock. We always promise that we will stop at 6. So we will stop at 6.
I want to answer just one question which has been put up on the Q&A panel.
Sure.
First, what kind of VC would we be if we do not invest in pre-revenue companies? So, feel free to reach out to us. That was what
And just to add to Arpit, we are, when we started, we didn't even know whether we'll have 10 topics to do the first 10 sessions. It has gone beyond. It is always helpful to us if you write to us saying that this is a topic we want to cover. That makes it actually far easier than us sort of guessing. And I also want to thank you that between the last one and this one is probably the maximum amount of mail we got on suggested topics. So please keep that coming. We may not be able to cover every topic, but it gives us great ideas on what to choose next. So thank you again, and thank you Kushal, thank you Arpit, but also Gaurav, Anand, Subramaniam, and Sri Kumar. I think it was great variety on the panel today, and I really appreciate your thoughts and comments.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.